The garlic was seconds from turning bitter, and the eviction notice on the kitchen island had a red municipal stamp I recognized too fast. I stood in Alessandra Miller's doorway with a misdelivered package under one arm, watching diced onions darken at the edges of a heavy iron skillet, while she stared at that legal-sized envelope like it had just taken the oxygen out of her home. The kitchen smelled like roasting garlic, hot oil, fresh basil, and panic held too politely. "Alessandra," I said. She didn't look up. The wooden spoon in her hand had a scorched edge, blackened from some old kitchen accident. Her thumb kept rubbing that burn mark, back and forth, like if she pressed hard enough, the paper on the counter might stop being real. That was my first mistake. My second was moving before asking. I stepped inside, set the package on the counter, lowered the burner, and took the spoon from her hand before the garlic crossed the point of no return. "Move," I said. "I'll save it." The words landed wrong. I heard it the moment they left my mouth. Alessandra lifted her head. Flour dusted one sleeve of her cream cardigan. Her floral apron was tied neatly at her waist. Her hair was pinned up with a pencil that looked like it had survived 3 recipes and 1 private disaster. She didn't shout. She didn't shrink. She simply looked at my hand around her spoon, then at my face, then at the stove. "Enzo," she said calmly, "that is my kitchen." I froze. The garlic hissed. Sunlight crossed the butcher block island, touching the torn envelope, the basil leaves, the chopped tomatoes, and the red stamp that made the whole room feel colder. I set the spoon down, slowly, palms open. "Sorry," I said. "Your kitchen. Your call." She watched me for one more second, then reached around me, turned the burner down another fraction, and stirred the onions herself. "Thank you for the tactical rescue," she said. "But next time, try words first." That seems reasonable. For most people, yes. The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Close enough to make me notice. I was Enzo Castillo, high-stakes auctioneer, specialist in ancient military antiquities, professional reader of twitching fingers, false confidence, and wealthy men pretending they were not scared of losing. If a bidder touched his cuff near a Roman cavalry mask, I knew whether he was finished or about to destroy the reserve price. If a provenance file hid 1 forged page under 6 genuine ones, I felt the rhythm break before I found the lie. I was good under pressure. I was terrible at waiting. Alessandra Miller, my neighbor of 10 months, lived by a different clock. Culinary historian, boutique caterer, woman who could reconstruct a first-century banquet from a cracked clay bowl and half a line of Latin. She simmered. She layered. She let things become themselves, which was why the notice on her counter looked so wrong. It didn't simmer. It threatened. I nodded toward the envelope. "May I ask?" "You may ask. What is Arthur Pendleton trying to do?" The spoon paused once, then moved again. "You know him?" "I know the type. Men who sign documents like paper is a weapon." "That sounds accurate." She slid the envelope across the island. I did not touch it yet. The lesson from the spoon was fresh. "May I read it?" Her shoulders loosened by 1 careful inch. "Yes." I picked up the first page. Notice of commercial use violation. Potential lease default. Commercial property tax differential. Mandatory vacancy within 30 days unless corrected. The language was polished enough to frighten a tenant and sloppy enough to irritate me. "He's claiming your catering business void your residential lease," I said. "He says the kitchen upgrades count as commercial conversion. You have a home occupation permit and a historical food research variance from the zoning office. Low traffic, no retail pickup, no signage, no on-site staff beyond event prep. I know the rules. Enzo, I believe you." She looked at me quickly. Maybe everyone else had started with doubt. I turned the page. "He's using District 9 valuation metrics." "What does that mean?" "This house is District 4, residential. Historical overlay. District 9 is mixed commercial near downtown. Higher tax rate, different comparables, different market pressure. So he's wrong. Not wrong, I said. Useful wrong. The kind of wrong someone uses when he expects you to panic before you verify it. The sauce simmered behind us. Alessandra set the scorched spoon on a ceramic rest and pressed one fingertip to the burned edge. What does he get if I panic? I looked through the window at the quiet cul-de-sac. Old trees, modest lawns, houses with porches instead of gates. The kind of neighborhood developers call underutilized when they mean not expensive enough yet. The owner changed last month, didn't he? Her face answered before she did. Yes, there it is. He pressures you out, claims commercial reclassification, then bundles the property with others before the neighborhood board can object. She closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, she reached for the spoon again. Not shaking, working. I have 3 museum events in 4 weeks, she said. A Greco-Roman exhibition dinner, a preservation donor night, and a university lecture banquet. If I lose this kitchen, I lose those contracts. If I lose those contracts, I lose the business. If I lose the business, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. The sauce bubbled too hard. This time, I did not touch the burner. I looked at her. May I? She handed me the spoon. That mattered more than it should have. I stirred carefully, slower than my instinct wanted. What do you need from me? I asked. Her eyes narrowed, checking the sentence for traps. I thought you were about to tell me. I'm improving under supervision. A real smile appeared. Small, tired, but real. I need to know whether he has leverage. Then we build a packet. Actual District 4 comps, your zoning variants, original covenants, museum contracts, municipal records, every communication in writing. You do not call Pendleton without me. I do not call Pendleton without you. You do not take over the case. I provide tools. You use them. The words settled between us like a signed term sheet. She nodded, then picked up the tomatoes and handed me a knife. Fine, she said. If you're going to stand there, dice these evenly. That was how it started. Not with a confession, not with a grand gesture, with garlic saved from burning, a fraudulent notice on the counter, and a scorched wooden spoon. I was no longer allowed to grab without permission. The next morning, we stood in the municipal records office under a flickering light that made everyone look guilty. A clerk named Nora Peterson sat behind the counter, glasses low on her nose, reading our request form as if it had insulted her personally. You want certified transaction records for District 4 residential lots? She asked. Yes, I said. Historical overlay included? Yes. Subdivision board conversion restrictions? Yes. She looked up. People usually ask for one address. People usually aren't dealing with a fraudulent commercial valuation packet. Nora's expression did not change, but one eyebrow shifted by a millimeter. A live bidder tell you an attorney, auctioneer. That is not better. Usually faster. That is also not better. Behind me, Alessandra made a sound that was almost a laugh. She had come because the request was hers. Her name on the forms, her variance, her kitchen. I was not going to become the man who fought her battle while she waited outside the room. Nora looked past me to her. You're the tenant? Yes, Alessandra said. I'm requesting records to respond to a commercial use violation notice. Nora held out her hand. Then I'll talk to you. I stepped aside. It should have embarrassed me more than it did. Alessandra placed her documents on the counter. Lease, variance, notice, original permit, photos of the kitchen. Her fingers moved quickly, but not nervously. She knew where every page lived. Nora read the first sheet, then the second. Then she looked back at me. District 9. She said, that's what Pendleton cited. That man again. Alessandra leaned in. You know him? I know his paperwork. Nora said. He keeps trying to make residential houses look like future commercial corridors because developers love imaginary inevitability. My headache eased. Nora stamped the intake request. I can certify the District 4 records by tomorrow afternoon. But you also need the 1998 Historical Overlay Covenant. It limits commercial conversion without subdivision board review. If Pendleton scheduled an inspection without 14 days written notice, get the appointment number. No authority. Outside. Alessandra opened her notebook against the hood of my car and drew 3 columns. Records. People. Deadlines. You have nice handwriting. I said, "You sound surprised." I respect anyone who can write under pressure without turning letters into battlefield debris. She capped the pen. You compliment like a man who sells helmets with dents in them. I sold a Macedonian shield fragment last month. The dents were the provenance. Of course they were. The wind lifted a corner of her notebook. I held it down with 2 fingers. She looked at my hand, not because I had done anything wrong, because she noticed things now. So did I? That afternoon, Pendleton sent his first follow-up email. Ms. Miller. Failure to remediate unauthorized commercial kitchen use may result in expedited review. Please prepare the premises for a preliminary walkthrough later this week. Arthur Pendleton. Managing Proxy. Alessandra read it at the kitchen island, while a tray of honeyed figs cooled beside her. She set the phone down. Later this week, she said. That's not a date. No. On purpose. Yes. She reached for the scorched spoon, then stopped herself and picked up a pencil instead. Good. A small shift. Reply? She asked. I turned my laptop toward her. Drafted. But you edit. She read aloud. Mr. Pendleton, please provide the statutory basis for any expedited review, the municipal appointment number, and the identity of any official inspector attending. Until proper notice is served under my lease and city procedure, no walkthrough is authorized. All communication must be in writing. Alessandra Miller. She added 1 sentence. My historical food research variance remains active and attached for reference. Then she hit send herself. I did not touch the keyboard. That night, she tested a Roman-style sauce for the museum gala, and I built the first comparative sales grid beside the stove. Tool. Certified Municipal Records. Deliverable. Evaluation spreadsheet with district separation. Arena. The kitchen where the threat lived. The numbers told the story before I had to. Pendleton's valuation was inflated by 42%. His commercial adjustment came from properties with storefront access, parking lots, and retail licenses. Alessandra's house sat on a residential cul-de-sac with a historical overlay and no customer traffic. He was not mistaken. He was building a paperwork siege. Alessandra set a small plate beside my laptop without looking at me. What is this? Reconstructed moratum with soft cheese, herbs, and olive oil. I don't eat while working. You will tonight. I have a system. So do I. Mine includes not letting the person helping me become unbearable from hunger. I looked down at the plate. Then, at her. She was already back at the stove. The pantry door squealed when she opened it. I wrote the sound down in my head. Not because it mattered to the case, because it mattered to the room. By Wednesday, the pressure tightened. Pendleton sent another email. The museum curator, Grace Howard, came over with contract letters proving Alessandra's work was educational culinary interpretation, not retail catering. An independent appraiser, Bennett Hughes, reviewed the records and signed 1 clean sentence that mattered. District 9 commercial comparables are invalid for a District 4 historical horizontal residence. Alessandra read that sentence twice. Then she pressed the paper to the counter with both hands and finally took a full breath. Say it. I said. She looked at me. He doesn't have clean leverage. No. He has pressure. Yes. And bad numbers. Very bad numbers. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. Not then. She reached for the scorched spoon and tapped it once against her palm. I used to think the burn made it ugly. It doesn't. No? It means someone kept using it. Her fingers closed around the handle. For a second, the kitchen went quiet. Then the oven timer screamed. She laughed once, startled and breathless, and turned back to work. On Monday morning, Pendleton made his move. Ms. Miller, a municipal zoning inspector will attend the property tomorrow at 9 a.m. for preliminary documentation of commercial equipment. Refusal to cooperate may be interpreted as obstruction. Arthur Pendleton. Alessandra read it once. Then again, a streak of flour sat along her cheek, and she did not notice. He moved it up. He says he did. She held the phone out. I read it twice. No appointment number. No inspector name. No cited authority. Classic pressure. But pressure works when it arrives on a day you already cannot breathe. Her oven timer went off. She turned too quickly, bumped the island, and the scorched spoon rolled toward the edge. I caught it before it hit the floor. This time, I handed it back. She looked at the spoon in my palm, then at me. I don't know if I can do this tomorrow, she said. There it was. Not surrender. A truthful inventory of capacity. I placed the spoon on the counter between us. Then we do the next part like a kitchen. A kitchen? Yes. No one carries every pan. We assign stations. Despite everything, one corner of her mouth moved. You are about to make a war plan with a culinary metaphor. I'm adapting to the arena. She picked up a towel and wiped flour from her cheek. Fine. Stations. I pointed to the island. You demand appointment records and inspector identity. Nora confirms whether the city has an actual inspection schedule. Bennett finalizes the valuation rebuttal. Grace prepares the museum letter. I organize the packet. And Pendleton? If he shows up without authority, you deny entry in writing. If he shows up with authority, we document and respond. No shouting, no guessing, no letting him set the pace. She looked at the dough, then at the notice, then at the spoon. Okay, she said. Stations. We worked until midnight. Nora confirmed no formal inspection existed under Alessandra's address. Grace sent a signed museum letter with contract attachments. Bennett delivered the independent valuation rebuttal, stamped and notarized. The subdivision board secretary confirmed Pendleton had submitted only an informal advisory request, not an enforcement proceeding. Alessandra sent the denial of entry notice herself. I printed 3 packets, one for her, one for Pendleton, one for any municipal officer unlucky enough to appear on her porch with incomplete paperwork. At exactly 9 a.m., Arthur Pendleton rang the doorbell. He stood on the porch in a navy suit too sharp for the neighborhood, holding a metal clipboard like a badge. Beside him stood a nervous younger agent and a man with a municipal ID clipped to his jacket. Across the street, Olive Foster stopped watering her hydrangeas. She did not go inside. Good. Witness. Alessandra opened the door. I stood 3 steps behind her. Not in front, behind. Her voice was steady. Mr. Pendleton, please provide the formal inspection appointment number. Pendleton's smile did not reach his eyes. Ms. Miller, we discussed cooperation. No, you sent an email. I requested legal authority. He tried to look over her shoulder at me. She shifted half a step. Small movement. Clear message. This is Lucas Harris from Zoning, Pendleton said. The man with the ID cleared his throat. I'm here for an informal advisory observation, not enforcement. Pendleton's jaw tightened. Alessandra turned to Lucas. Mr. Harris, did your office issue a 14-day inspection notice? No, ma'am. Do you have authority to enter my residence today without consent? No, ma'am. Then I do not consent. Lucas looked relieved. Pendleton did not. This is obstruction, Pendleton said. I moved only after Alessandra glanced back and nodded. Actually, I said, this is procedure. I handed Pendleton the packet. Certified District 4 records. Historical overlay, covenant. Active home occupation variance. Independent appraisal rebuttal. Museum educational use letter. Clerk confirmation that no enforcement inspection exists. Any future attempt to misrepresent District 9 commercial comparables as residential valuation support will be included in the licensing complaint already drafted. Pendleton flipped through the first pages. His eyes slowed at Bennett's rebuttal, then at Nora's certification, then at Grace's letter. "You had no right to interfere," he said to me. Alessandra answered, "He had my permission to help gather records. I am the tenant. You can address me." The porch went quiet. Olive's hose kept running across the street, water ticking against the sidewalk. Lucas Harris stepped back. "I'll note that entry was not authorized and no violation was observed today." Pendleton's face reddened. "This is not over." "No," Alessandra said, holding out a certified copy of her response letter. "Now it goes to the board, where everyone can read the numbers in public." That was the first room goes quiet moment, except the room was a porch, and the quiet belonged entirely to her. The municipal hearing came 9 days later. Bad carpet, buzzing lights, a coffee machine that sounded like it was losing an argument. Alessandra sat at the front table with the packet arranged in exact order. I sat beside her, not as counsel, not as savior, as witness and valuation specialist. Behind us sat Grace, Bennett, Nora, Olive, and 2 other neighbors who had suddenly remembered Pendleton, asking whether they would consider early relocation incentives. Arthur Pendleton sat across the aisle with a lawyer who looked annoyed to have inherited a messy file. The board chair, Claire Adams, adjusted her glasses. Commercial use reclassification request for residential parcel 1148 Willow Bin Lane. Alessandra's fingers moved toward the scorched spoon she had brought in her bag. Yes, she had brought it, not for evidence. For herself, her thumb touched the burned edge once, then released. Claire looked up. "Ms. Miller, you may begin." Alessandra stood. "I operate a permitted historical culinary research business from my home, under an active variance. I do not run a restaurant. I do not serve walk-in customers. I do not employ on-site staff. My work supports museums, universities, and preservation programming. Mr. Pendleton's filing attempts to reclassify my residence using commercial district data that does not apply to this parcel." She handed the board the first packet. Her voice did not shake. Pendleton watched her like he was seeing her for the first time. Good. He had made the mistake men like him often make. He mistook quiet for weak. Bennett testified next. "These properties cited by Mr. Pendleton are in District 9, he said. Retail frontage, parking access, commercial licensing. They are not valid comparables for a residential historical angular property in District 4. Nor confirmed the records. Grace confirmed the museum use. Olive stood, clutching her purse, and said, "I live across the street. The only nuisance I've observed is Mr. Pendleton parking badly." A laugh moved through the room. Even Claire's mouth twitched. Then Pendleton's lawyer tried one final angle. Regardless of valuation, the presence of upgraded ventilation and large ovens suggests commercial intensification beyond residential character. Alessandra stood again before I could move. Good. She opened her folder to the variance. The ventilation upgrades were required by the city for fire safety under the historical research permit. The ovens are listed in the approved equipment schedule. I have complied with every inspection, every capacity limit, and every delivery window. She placed the scorched spoon on the table beside the packet. It made the smallest wooden sound. "This kitchen is not a loophole," she said. "It is my livelihood, my research space, and my home." Mr. Pendleton tried to turn compliance into evidence against me. I'm asking the board not to reward that. That was the second room goes quiet moment. Not because I spoke, because she did. The board ruled 26 minutes later. The reclassification request was denied. The variance remained active. Pendleton's valuation packet was referred for licensing review. Any future inspection would require proper notice and documented cause. Alessandra did not cry. She packed her folder, put the scorched spoon back in her bag, then walked out of the hearing room under her own power. Outside, the late morning air smelled like wet pavement and food truck coffee. Grace hugged her first. Olive hugged her second. Nora, who did not seem like a hugging person, handed her a certified copy of the ruling and said, "Keep this near the door." Bennett nodded at me. "Clean packet." From Bennett. That was applause. Pendleton left through a side exit. No speech, no threat, no clean win for him to twist. Just a man who had tried to build a siege ramp on bad ground and discovered the ground had records. That evening, Alessandra cooked dinner. Not for a client, not for a museum, not for research, for herself, and somehow, for me. The kitchen was golden with late sun. The windows were open. Garlic softened in oil, slow and fragrant, nowhere near burning. Tomatoes waited on the board, diced evenly because she had done them before I arrived. I stood near the island with my sleeves rolled up and my hands empty. "What station?" I asked. She smiled without turning. "Bread. I'm not qualified. You sell empire-shaped objects to billionaires. Bread is less forgiving." "It is not." "It absolutely is." She handed me a basket and a linen towel. "Warm rolls. Put them on the table. Try not to appraise them. I make no promises." The dining table near the window was set for two. White plates, folded napkins, a small vase of basil flowers. No legal envelope, no hearing packet, no red stamp. The kitchen had returned to itself. Or maybe it had become something new. We ate while the last light moved across the floor. She told me about Roman banquet etiquette. I told her about an auction bidder who once tried to intimidate me by bidding against himself. She laughed with her whole face, and the sound stayed in the kitchen after she stopped. When I carried our plates to the sink, the pantry door opened without squealing. Alessandra paused. "You fixed that?" "Yes." "When?" "Tuesday." "You weren't going to mention it?" It seemed more efficient not to. She leaned against the island, holding the scorched spoon. "Enzo." I turned. She was looking at the table, the dinner, the warm light, the kitchen that had nearly been taken from her, the ordinary quiet after a month of threat. Then she looked at me. She smiled, not relieved, not polite, a smile with a door inside it. "Would you ever want a life like this?" she asked. The title line landed softly. No audience, no hearing room, no legal packet, just the smell of roasting garlic and a spoon that had survived being burned. I did not answer quickly. For once, quick would have been wrong. I looked at the table, the open window, the basil flowers, the repaired pantry hinge, the woman who had not let me take over her fight and had somehow made room for me anyway. "Yes," I said, "if it's a life you choose to invite me into." Her fingers tightened around the spoon. "I am." "Then, yes." She set the spoon down between us, and for a man who had spent years closing rooms before they could slow him down, standing still felt like the bravest thing I had ever done. Months later, the Greco-Roman exhibition opened under vaulted museum lights. Alessandra's food station stood at the center of the hall, a cedar serving structure inspired by Roman siege engineering, all clean lines and clever ramps and hidden supports. Grace called it educational drama. I called it structurally persuasive. Alessandra told us both to stop talking near the donors. The catering business had not only survived, it had expanded. The municipal ruling became part of her grant application. The museum renewed her contract. The university booked a lecture series. Pendleton lost his management proxy license after 3 other tenants came forward with similar notices. At the registration table, Alessandra handed me a laminated logistics pass. My name was printed beneath hers. Enzo Castillo, Valuation and Load-in Coordination. I looked at it for a long time. "I have a title?" "You have a schedule," she said. "That sounds serious." "It is. You are in charge of transport timing, donor traffic flow, and making sure no one touches the cedar tower with wine in their hand. So you want my professional impatience. I want your professional precision." She adjusted the pass on my jacket, then stepped back. "I can handle the impatience." The scorched wooden spoon lay on the prep table behind her, cleaned and tied with a small ribbon around the handle. She used it to point at volunteers, trays, the timing chart, and once at me when I tried to move a crate before she gave permission. I stopped. She noticed. Her smile said, she noticed. Near the end of the night, after the donors had eaten and the curator had finished thanking everyone, Alessandra took my hand in front of Grace, Bennett, Nora, Olive, and half the museum board. Not dramatically, not as a performance, just as if my place beside her had become obvious enough to stop explaining. Come on, she said. We have one more station to close. We walked through the warm noise of the museum, past the cedar tower, past the trays of honeyed figs, past the people who now knew what her work was worth. At the prep table, she placed the scorched spoon in my hand. The burned edge fit against my palm. Once, it had been the proof of my worst instinct. Move fast, grab control, fix before asking. Now, it felt like something else. A reminder to slow down before the garlic turned bitter. A reminder that the best things did not close at auction speed. Alessandra touched the ribbon on the handle and said, "Don't lose that." I won't. I know. The museum doors opened to the evening air, and the smell of roasting garlic from her final tray drifted into the hall. The spoon stayed warm in my hand, no longer a warning that something was burning, but proof that I had learned when to wait. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. A home is not protected by speed alone. It is protected by truth, patience, and the courage to let the right person stand beside you without taking your voice away. Green flag. Healthy love does not rush in and take control. It asks permission, respects boundaries, brings real help, and celebrates the other person's strength in public. Like plus subscribe. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.